the importance of instant feedback. So we're joined again by some of the ELN team, and throughout today's session we'll have a couple of discussion points to talk about feedback, instant feedback as well, and the importance of that in education, training, staff development, and in all areas of kind of learning and development, really. So to start off with, one of the key bits for me just to talk about is actually, well, what is feedback? Well, feedback is something that is everywhere, and is probably something that's more common in today's world than ever before. We get feedback instantly from everything we do. We're always getting responses when you buy something online. You get an email, survey sent to you. Every time you go on your phone, you're getting some form of feedback telling you what you are, what you aren't doing, in terms of your habits and the way you act and the way you behave. So it's really prominent in today's kind of society. And feedback is essentially defined as information about reactions to a product, a person's performance of a task, which is used as a basis for improvement. So we're looking to improve something. And a really important part for me thinking about this, particularly as an educator, is thinking about how we use feedback to shape our learning and development activities. And a really key saying comes to mind for me here, which is teach the way they learn, don't learn the way I teach. And feedback, I think, can be a really important method to understand that kind of saying and make sure that when we're running training and development, but it's actually suited to the needs of our kind of learners, clients, customers, whoever it might be. So I'm just going to open the floor kind of really to the group, and just kind of discuss, well, what methods are there for giving feedback? So I'll get the ball rolling. So for example, a common one within education can be written feedback. A learner submits a work, and we'll provide them with some written comments or a written report that lets them know what they've done and how well they've done that, and maybe even what they could do better. But yeah, Dee, have you got any other methods of feedback?
Yeah, obviously being in a hairdressing industry, it's very much a verbal feedback. So you would do an observation, and then obviously feedback's quite often verbal after an observation, because you're there with the person, aren't you? So, but I think it's also important when you do that to follow it up with writing. So make sure that it's recorded as well, because going forward you might need to refer back to it. It's good for a reflection and even for compliance purposes and things like that.
Excellent. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, three really key ones, and recording the feedback again for me is a really important thing to do. There's multiple ways you could record that, again, whether that's a written document, even actually whether that's an audio or a video recording of some kind of feedback sessions, that can really help, and it's something that people can then refer back to later on past the event to fall back on and use to shape moving forward. Has anyone else got kind of any other methods for this? So again, probably some of the examples that Dee and I spoke about there are very much one-to-one kind of approaches to feedback, tutor to learner, for example, or manager to staff member or employee. Is there any kind of other methods of feedback that anybody can identify? Yeah, Kelly?
Just general discussion, really. I mean, colleague to colleague, when you're going through standardization meetings, just a general discussion will provide feedback, a two-way discussion program.
Brilliant. Yeah, a great example there. I think peer-to-peer, small groups potentially giving feedback following an activity can be really effective ways of providing some feedback to people following an activity. So that's brilliant. So kind of, why are we talking about feedback? Well, in my experience, feedback can sometimes come and feel like a bit of a chore in the workplace, in education, and actually it's something that we feel like we need to do. But actually, feedback for me is one of the most strategic tasks that you can do within your role, particularly as an educator. It can often be seen as a transactional task. I need to give this learner some feedback. But actually, when you really value the importance of the feedback, it can become really strategic in supporting that individual's development and the way they progress within their learning. So it can be quite common for people to think about feedback only ever really occurs. If you were to ask an organisation, for example, when feedback occurs, they'll typically talk about the response to potentially some form of survey.